Deep breath, everybody. England are playing a football match in a tournament, and it's one that we're favourites to win. This is ESPN's Football Forecast, a Euros special with myself, James Allcott, and Kweku Afari joins me to talk about England's first game against Serbia. Let's zoom out for a second. When it comes to that group, how do you feel about it? Are you, I mean, no one's ever excited about any group because you can pick the bones, but does that feel like a group that you would describe as easy?
You don't want to describe it as easy, but the nature of the Euros now, far cry from years back where there was only 16 teams in it and 2 teams weren't qualified out of the group. 3 of these teams are qualifying out of this group realistically. So wouldn't call it easy in terms of the opposition, but it's easier to get out of the group. England will be confident of getting 9 points in this group. They should be getting 9 points in this group. It should get to a point in the final group game where England can rest players and kind of rotate and experiment and figure out what they're going to do in the last stages of the knockout round. So it's not an easy group, but I expect England to get out of it pretty comfortably. And I suppose with these group stages, it means that people aren't as engaged, and that's the kind of feeling I'm getting from England fans. They're not as engaged when it comes to these Euros because they know that in this group we should get out of it. It's about when we come up against bigger nations later on in the tournament.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you're right, actually. I think because with the 4 teams, there'll be 4 teams that finish third out of the groups that make it through. And so essentially, if you win a game, you're going to be unlucky not to make it through, because there might be some groups where there's 2 teams at the bottom that have drawn against each other, and that'll be that one team on one, and they won't make it through. So win a game and you're through. And I think in terms of these 3 games, it's then one of going, okay, can we go and win that group to give ourselves a better chance in the next round? Yeah. And to kick off with Serbia, I think is a confusing one in my opinion. I think this group is confusing because I think you've got Denmark, who are a really strong squad, maybe not, the top 5, 6, but have got a lot of strong players and are coming off the back of a poor Qatar World Cup. But that will kind of sort of temper the expectations, which I think suits Denmark a little bit. I was out in Qatar and watched their first game. I think it was against Tunisia, and you could kind of feel that everyone had them as their dark horses, and I think they really, really struggled with that. Serbia scored a load of goals in the World Cup, but finished last in their group. So they also have a lot of threats that could affect England in terms of them finishing second in the group and making it a much harder journey to get to the promised land of a final and winning that final. In terms of the players for Serbia, first and first, little fun fact. I remember my friend Vuj telling me about this. He said that the average height of people in Serbia, men in particular, is over 6 foot.
It's crazy.
So it's a big old nation.
And you see it, it's reflected in their starting 11. And it's crazy because maybe it's a negative stereotype, but when you think about Eastern European teams, you think about them being defensively solid. This is a team that's got loads of firepower. Like you said, the World Cup scored a lot of goals. Vlahovic, who's a striker that was coveted for many years, doesn't always start for Serbia. Obviously, Mitrovic is their main man going forward. And out wide, they're very, very strong as well. Kostic was one of the players of the, I think it was Europa League season when Frankfurt won it a couple of years ago. And so they're really strong going forward, but they've shown the defensive, not weakness, but frailties in occasion. So I think England will be confident going into this game, but again, it's the side that can hurt you if you're not on your A game. And what's England's biggest weakness? Our defence. What's Serbia's biggest strength? Their attack. So that's a potential banana skin, but I think England should be fine in this one.
Yeah, I think so. You speak of Vlahovic. I think one thing that I think everyone should kind of think about when they're thinking about national teams is it's all good and well having a few big names, and a lot of teams have that. It's the spread of that I think is really important. And I think with Serbia, the fact that Vlahovic, you've got him and Mitrovic there, yet you're quite possibly not going to start Vlahovic. You kind of, it takes that player away from it all. Tadic is 35. We'll all know Tadic, of course, from his time at Southampton, but obviously more famously probably at Ajax. He continues to be a really important player. He played for a Fenerbahce side that had a great season, didn't win the league, but got 99 points. He scored 10 goals, got 14 assists, was very impressive. Created 30 big chances as well in 37 games. So he's still the talisman for Serbia. As you say, it's there's 2 sides of the game. So getting the ball up to him, you've got Milinkovic-Savic as well, another big player, but another creative player as well. So there's a lot of exciting things going forward. Can they deal with England going forward? I guess the question then becomes, how does Southgate set up? And I guess more importantly, there's probably a few players that we're not totally sure on where they're going to start and how they're going to play, but also how how forthright do you think England will be in this opening game?
Well, that's the word. Forthright is what England should be. It should be attacking this tournament, not just, I don't know, coasting through games, because England have got so many attacking talents, and obviously we're biased and we watch the Premier League week in, week out where most of these players play, although England's two best players, and Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham, don't play in England. I feel like this England team has the ability to go and take the game to teams, and with the attacking talents on display, with some of the attacking talents that can come off the bench, England should look to attack the Serbia team and look to lay a marker down, because it's important how you start tournaments. Of course, it's just about getting through the group and making sure you win these games, but setting down a marker, scoring 3 or 4 in a game against the Serbia side that can be there for the taking, I think will set England in good stead for the rest of this tournament, and that's how they should attack it. Southgate has shown us that that's not the type of manager he is. He's a manager who wants to just get through the tournament methodically, but I think he's at a point right now where people understand how talented these players are and how England should play with these players at his disposal.
I'm intrigued by that element of it, because you're right, he is methodical, and to a point he's pragmatic. But I think I've said this before. Like, I feel like he's logical. Yeah, and I think he knows logical. He's got some really good players there. I also think there's a group of players there that are young but experienced and have played in a few tournaments now, and now actually don't want to just be there. They want to really put their stamp on it. And I think, you know, whatever your feelings on Southgate, what he probably would allow for them to have, and he has spoken about this in terms of a leadership group and players kind of being able to kind of step up. If he gives a framework defensively in terms of stopping the opposition, or at least controlling them the best you can, I think Southgate goes, Bellingham, you be Bellingham. Yeah. Foden, you be Foden. Kane, you guys go and solve it to a point.
But can I ask you a question? What is Bellingham? Who is Bellingham? Because Bellingham, who was the player of the year for Borussia Dortmund last season, is different to the Bellingham right now, who's more of a goal-scoring threat. Phil Foden this season, who's been more of a fulcrum for Man City, very different to Phil Foden, who's played the previous tournaments for England. Harry Kane's Harry Kane. Yeah. So when you say he provides the framework, what do you mean? Do you mean allow Bellingham to be that centre midfielder, or allow Bellingham to be that attacking threat?
I think the one person, when you've got a player like Foden who's playing the way that he's playing, I think everyone is aligned. And again, I think the thing is that Southgate's not answering questions both in interviews every day, but also in games, right? When there's a game every 3 days, when you're going, oh, Foden needs to play in the middle, within 2 weeks, he could have seen that and showed you 3 times that's the right thing. Yeah. So it takes more time for him to be able to kind of go, I know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
You know, let's talk about, you know, when we talk about Rashford or Henderson, things like that. I think he is a logical manager, and he will understand that he will want to try and get Foden into central areas. Therefore, someone has to, it's not about making way, but it's about how do we get the best players on the pitch and everyone thriving to the best of their abilities in totality. And I think it's a very simple conversation with Bellingham to say that we understand what you do at Real Madrid, but here we've got these assets and we want to get Foden in the team and we want him to play in those central areas. So we would like you to be a bit more of a box-to-box midfielder. Okay. And because you've got that engine, you've got that energy, you've got that stamina, you've got that ability to go and score goals, but stop them and break up play as well. Yeah. So I don't see a problem with him being not the sort of Zidane figure that he's kind of been in the second half for Real Madrid, or the Kaká figure that he was in the first half for Real Madrid. Yeah. I think he can be Jude Bellingham. He could be more, maybe it's more a Gerrard role, right? Yeah. And so I don't see that as a bad thing. I think we've got a player who can do that. Yeah. Well, to take one of your phrases, let's zoom out a little bit. Jude Bellingham is great at doing his box-to-box thing, and we've seen him do it at Borussia Dortmund. But then, especially in the Serbia game, Declan Rice is the sitter. Tadic is the man that you have to pick up. And there's variations of Tadic at different teams, different top teams of the tournament. Antoine Griezmann does a similar thing for France, maybe sits a little bit deeper these days. And so that's why I think England got their biggest issue in the midfield, when you've got an ethereal player that is difficult to pick up and you've got one sitter. What Mikel Arteta found out during the season is that Declan Rice, at this stage of his development, can't quite do that soul-sitting role in terms of that sitting midfielder. That's why Thomas Partey towards back in the season came in. So what do you do in that midfield? Well, you have Rice and you have Bellingham and you have Foden. I don't think that Rice, in a big game against big teams, I don't think that Gareth Southgate's going to do that. I think he's got some big decisions to make, and I think left back is a big part of that. Okay. And so there's several options he can use. Like he could be bold and he could play Trent there and he can step in. He could play Trippier on that side and he can step in. And if you have those two kind of players, in terms of kind of controlling the ball and moving up the pitch, that then allows someone like Bellingham to move
Will
forward.
Southgate invert? Have we ever seen him invert? Have we seen him do it consistently? That's, I think, what the issue is. Because when we talk about Southgate and his formations that he puts forth, we're talking about a straight 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1. And I think football has become more nuanced. And we shouldn't really be able to state a manager's formation because they're all asymmetric and they're all fluid and they're all moving. But I think Southgate, not to his fault because he's managed to get England to the latter stages of tournaments, but it's still pretty rigid. It's not fluid. We've not seen inversion. We've not seen players move into different positions.
So again, I think there's options there. You've got Kobbie Mainoo who can step in, and maybe you play Foden out on the left, which I know is not going to suit everyone, but someone's got to move about. I'd really love to see Gordon play. I think he offers us someone in terms of stretching in behind. If Kane is I think he's going to need to stay up there a little bit more. But again, I think you could have a midfield. I think you can do that with Bellingham, Rice and Foden. That's an unreal midfield. And again, you sit Foden down and go, we're going to need you to defend as well. Okay. I don't think it has to be that heavier. These guys are egos, but they're young players who want to go and achieve.
And one thing they do as well, they shed their egos when they play for England, and that's not what we had in 2006 or 2010 or even Euro 2004. Those players were well-established, world-class players that wanted to do what they did for their clubs, for their country.
I get where you're coming from, though, and we may be living in a world where you're right. It's a simple back four, and you have a Kobbie Mainoo in there, and you put Foden out on the left-hand side. You don't play Gordon. You don't play brilliantly, but you win 2-0. Like, I think he's fine to live in that world as well. He's very good at shutting out the noise. He's done that before. He's done that in the Euros before, and he'll be happy to do that again. And I think if you said to Southgate, come out of this first game, you haven't conceded. Not sure what else is going to happen, but you haven't conceded. I think he'll be very, very happy with that. Because as we said, 4 points absolutely gets you through. And I think he would back himself, both in the Denmark game and in the Slovenia game, to get himself at least one win out of those two games as well. So Terry Venables famously said, the only thing that matters about that first game is not losing that first game. And in Euro 96... that's what happened. We drew that first game against Switzerland. It wasn't great. And you had to go and win the second one. The problem you have with all these groups is the fact that, say somehow you lose that first game against Serbia, then the Denmark game becomes a lot scarier than you want it to be.
What you said right there in terms of Venables, that's what Tony Foke, who's been on the show before, told me about when we were out in AFCON. Nigeria didn't lose their first game. He goes, I know we didn't play well, but it's important not to lose that first game because it gives you that platform to go ahead. You're still unbeaten, and if you win that next game, you're pretty much through your group.
Right. So we wouldn't like a draw, but you probably would take it. I think we should be going out and winning that game. And if you think of Euro 2020, we won that first game, not fantastically, but we won it. I think we'll see a similar thing. I think we'll win 2-0. I think there'll be grumblings, but I think it'll be professional. And I think we will be able to score quite comfortably. I think it'll be a nice business-like 2-0 win for me. What do you think?
I agree. I think the exact same scoreline. I think England will do their job efficiently. It'll be a typical Southgate England performance, and we'll win 2-0.
Throughout Euro 2024, Bet365 is unleashing their super boost every single match day. So make sure you check out their boost to find out that it's never ordinary at Bet365.